Well, I'd like to welcome everyone for joining us here for this ACRL Science and Technology Section's Hot Topics discussion today. My name is Meg Frost, and I am co-chair of the Hot Topics Committee this year, along with Jason Burton. And on behalf of our committee, we welcome you all for joining us. The presentation today is being recorded. However, as we typically do, we will turn off the recording for the Q&A portion, and we will send a link of the recording to all those who have registered for the event. The Q&A button has been enabled, and we ask that you share your questions for our presenters there. Jason Coleman, a member of our committee, or myself, will ask the questions to the panelists following the presentation. And if you'd like to direct your questions to any specific panelist, please indicate that. Today, we are looking forward to learning more about how AI is impacting the development and accessibility of open educational resources and the role that librarians and the sciences can play in using and creating and promoting these resources. So I'm really pleased to introduce our panelists, starting with Sarah Norris, Scholarly Communications Librarian, and Lily Dubach, Textbook Affordability Librarian, both at the University of Central Florida. And they will start us out with an overview of the current landscape, followed by Reed Hepler, Digital Initiatives Librarian and Archivist from the College of Southern Idaho, who will talk about copyright issues related to AI and OER. And finally, Jennifer Goodland from San Juan College will discuss using AI to create curated packages of library resources. So Sarah and Lily.
Thank you so much, Meg. And hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to be here. We are going to present about our research on the landscape of the scholarly literature that discusses the intersection of AI and OER. And just so you're aware, we gave a very similar presentation for the Open Education Conference back in October of last year. And we had two other co-presenters, Rebecca McNulty and Amanda Major, both instructional designers at the University of Central Florida. To get started and to refer back to our presentation at the Open Ed conference as well. If you want a copy of these slides or our overview matrix about what we found in the scholarly literature, please feel free to go there. Again, those are the slides from the October presentation. But today we are going to quickly go over what we discussed and lead to some great discussion. So as far as how we did this, how did we find those scholarly articles that discussed both AI and OER? Our methodology includes selecting databases for certain reasons. So for Web of Science, because of its broad scope, we also chose the database ERIC because of its educational scope and related to OER. And we also wanted to make sure we were diving into the library literature for any articles related to OER and AI there. You can see our search terms. So we included a number of synonyms related to AI and paired with a number of synonyms related to OER as well. We were looking for peer-reviewed academic journal articles that we could get to online and that were in English. That was part of our inclusion criteria. And of course, those articles had to focus on both AI and OER. We excluded a number of things that we found, including conference proceedings. Those were excluded, theses and dissertations, books and book chapters, preprints and retracted articles were all excluded as well. We did not include anything that we could not access online. We did not include anything that was not in English or not peer-reviewed. And then if the articles were missing one or both of the focus areas, AI and or OER, we did not those, of course. Additionally, as we were searching Web of Science, we had to add a couple more features to our search. We needed to exclude oxygen evolution reaction and oxygen excess ratio. Those were not the OERs we were looking for. And so the total results from Web of Science were 249 after being deduplicated. And then further on, being deduplicated from there, in the other databases from Library, Literature, and Information Sciences, we got 5, and from ERIC, we got 50 unique articles. We then went into Google Scholar to make sure that we didn't miss anything important, and that search was a little simpler than the ones in the other databases. We limited it to 2023 to the present, which was up until September. And we just looked for artificial intelligence paired with open educational resources and subtracted proceedings because there were so many of those. Of the total 1,730 results, collected 191 promising sources, and then that was reduced down to 102 unique journal articles that were identified. We used various tools, including EndNote, to collect the articles that we were finding across the different databases. It assisted with deduplication, but it was not perfect. Definitely had to do some manual deduplication there. We used Microsoft Excel to account for the article information that we were finding, as well as develop our theme matrix as we identified themes for the articles we went through. We double checked peer review using Ulrich's Web Global Serials directory. And then, of course, with this being about AI, at least in part, we had to use AI tools. We use Scholarcy to help expedite our understanding what the articles were about, so it developed descriptions of the various articles during our review. We use Claude AI intermittently to help with identifying some themes. And then we were dabbling with the AI tool Site.ai, but it ran into a number of glitches and it was slower to load. But we're looking forward to that being a better tool to use in the future once it has some improvements. Overall, we collected 491 articles to be screened to make sure they could be included. Of those, 276 were included to be reviewed, and of those, 18 were included based on our criteria. And from those 18 articles, we did identify 11 different themes. The types of articles we found, there were 4 case studies, 4 just general research articles, 2 that were more opinion pieces, and 8 research studies. And ChatGPT was definitely the most popular tool noted in those articles. The year range is expected. Most came during or after the year that ChatGPT launched. We did have one from 2018, but as you can see, as the years go on, 3 in 2022, 5 in 2023, 9 in 2024, and we expect there would be even more this year if the research is continued. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk about the themes.
Thanks, Lily. And as Lily mentioned, throughout our methodology, we did come up with several themes. These are some of the core themes that did come up. Some of the other themes were sort of included in these sort of core themes that we're covering here. Since we're limited on time today, we're going to give just an abbreviated look at these. One of the key things that we did uncover as we were examining the articles that we had is that most of these themes really cross over as separate articles. So one article may have had multiple themes, some only had a couple, but by and large, we did see a trend that most of the articles did cover multiple themes within that process. Next slide. So we'll highlight a little bit about each of the themes. Again, for time's sake, we're going to highlight a few sort of key quotes from the articles that we took a look at. And you can certainly look at our slide link, which we have in the chat, and reach out if you have questions. The first theme that comes to the fore is legal questions. Probably no surprise with artificial intelligence. This area in particular was one that's near and dear to my heart as a scholar librarian. Certainly intellectual property, that intersection of AI, whether it was the training of large language models or the output, really thinking about intellectual property ownership. I know Reed's going to talk a lot about copyright. I look forward to hearing about that. But also things about acknowledging original creators. So there was a lot of intellectual property conversations happening in these articles. And of course, no doubt, data privacy was a major concern, thinking about individuals' privacy rights and what's going into these particular tools. Next slide. To no surprise as well, challenges was certainly a major theme in these articles as we were analyzing them. Every single article we looked at talked about challenges, anything from algorithmic bias to ethical considerations, whether it was broad academic integrity, all the way down to plagiarism and issues of authenticity of content. But one really interesting thing that came out of the analysis was this idea of inequality. OERs at their core really are foundational in access, equity, and inclusion. And so we anticipated the technological aspect of AI might have that sort of same theme. And there were some articles that did represent that, which we'll highlight in a moment. But there was an interesting perspective from one author about inequality and actually these tools being potentially a challenge with the digital divide, which we again thought was very interesting. Next slide. And of course, with challenges come benefits. As I mentioned, that sort of foundational piece of open education, being inclusive, being equitable, access, those were certainly big themes that came out of this article as well. Lily mentioned earlier about our research process and the inclusion of English language only. But one of the things that I think we might want to consider as we move forward is the idea of not just monolingualism in our analysis, and AI could actually help us a lot in that process by helping us navigate multiple languages in the analysis. Next slide. And then another theme that also was pervasive, but maybe not as strongly as some of the other themes, was accessibility. As Lily highlighted, much of what we had in the results were more research focused, more opinion pieces or theoretical, rather than case studies or more pragmatic types of articles. And so we would anticipate, if we continue this research going forward, that we'll probably see a little bit more of the topic or theme of accessibility as more of those kinds of articles come to the fore. Next slide. And then learning aspects was also not a surprise in terms of theming. Certainly that pragmatic integration of AI and open education, anything from the topic of individualizing education, but also pragmatically using generative AI to provide fact checking and curation of materials could be really beneficial. So it really highlighted a lot of support for research, teaching, and learning. And of course, re-emphasize the importance of things like AI digital literacy skills. Next slide. And then our very last theme is future implications. There was a lot of thought in these articles about what are the possibilities. Where could AI really assist in open education? And I think this is a really good one with scale and impact. If you are engaged in open education, a lot of what we do does have a lot of manual aspects to it. And so there is so much potential for generative AI to assist with scaling up and efficiencies, whether it's helping with transcription and annotations, translations, many of those practical things that do take a lot of time. We could leverage those tools a lot to help scale that up and by way of that increase impact. And very lastly, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, that was also brought up. So certainly as we're looking towards those, the intersection of AI in education and specifically open ed is going to be something we'll think about. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lily to talk about future expectations.
Thank you, Sarah. So definitely, this topic is in a lot of conversations. It's broader than what's in the published literature. So when thinking about how this line of research or this effort, this work will change, being aware of where those conversations are happening is important. I've only listed a couple examples on here, funded by the Flora and Hewitt Foundation, the MIT's AI and Open Education Initiative, that would be something to take a look at. And then just find those discussion groups that are either about AI or open education and see where those intersections happen. Again, I only listed a couple examples. There are plenty more out there. And also think about if there are decisions in the copyright realm and how that will change the landscape of what we're looking at. And then, of course, the AI tools themselves and how they change and become more advanced and maybe more specific to this type of work, just to be aware of that. What are some ways to kind of stay in the loop about these things a bit more? Well, the AACNU did release an open educational resources research database that I recommend that you check into. And then more on kind of the legal side of things, there are a number of different databases or resources to check into, one of which is on the slide here, the Database of AI Litigation from George Washington University. And then just as a quick check, as I had said before, our research into this stopped in about September of last year. And so since September, I noticed that there are 67 new articles in Web of Science based on our same search criteria, 3 in ERIC, but no newer ones in the library literature related database. So just looking at the 67 from Web of Science, we know more are being published. We're just into February, so interesting things to think about. Well, as I'm about to end, there's just the QR code again for our slides and overview matrix once again. Want to thank Sarah for participating with me, and Rebecca McNulty and Amanda Major for being contributors. And then we just have our references, which refer back to all the research that we had looked at and analyzed. So thank you so much for your attention. I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Thank you very much, Lily and Sarah. That was a fantastic presentation. In fact, when Meg reached out to me and said, I want you to be on this panel, or sorry, would you be on this panel? Or it might not have been Meg. I thought, you know what would be a really good session? That lit review that I saw at Open Education. So it's nice that you guys are here, and I'm really happy that we were able to present together. So I'm going to be talking about copyright, OERs, and artificial intelligence. And I just want you to know that this is like a constantly changing field. I just added a slide 2 days ago, and then the Copyright Office decided to weigh in and release the second part of their review of copyright and AI. And I was not able to put a slide about that. So things are always changing. I would encourage you guys to go read the US Copyright Office's their report. It's only 50 pages long. It's really informational. It's really nice to have that content available. So go and read that. So when I talk about copyright, I usually talk about it in the context of what I like to call the 3 C's of generative AI. The first is obviously copyright. Who owns the rights to this content, and how do we need to talk about artificial intelligence using copyrighted materials? Citation, or which tool was used to create the materials or tools we make with AI. If necessary, where did the user get their information or model? What was the context of this conversation, that type of thing. And then circumspection. What hazards, moral, ethical, educational, should I manage when I'm working with artificial intelligence? So copyright is essentially for purposes today, and I've written CSI's manual on copyright. So I mean, this could be a 70-page thing, but just very basically, it's about who owns the rights and what can they do because they own the rights, or if they own the rights or not. So there are 3 main questions we need to discuss when we're talking about copyright and artificial intelligence. The first is, what are the rights and responsibilities of the copyright owners, or what rights do people have who create or hold the rights to copyrighted works, and what responsibilities do they have when they are when they're talking about fair use, when they're granting people, oh, this is a fair use of my work, that type of thing. The second is, what are the rights and responsibilities of the copyright user? In other words, if people are using copyrighted materials with AI, what do they need to consider? What do they need to not do? What qualifies as fair use and what doesn't qualify as fair use? Also, when we're looking at selling or using the products, the output that we make with artificial intelligence, what is our responsibility as an AI user, and how should we communicate that? And then finally, which is generative AI? Is it a creator, or is it a user, or is it both, or is it neither? there's going to be a lot of conversations about that and a lot of different viewpoints, but we need to consider kind of how is generative AI interacting with these materials. And I am going to posit that AI is a new type of user. So copyrighted material derivations, making movies out of something, making a book with the same characters and themes, making a play out of something, or simply just, copying and making a new edition of the book. Derivations have typically all been direct user infringements. If you don't have copyright permissions from the owner or from the author, you are violating copyright. And this is a case where someone is directly taking from the material and transferring it over to something that they're creating using the intellectual property of someone else. But generative AI tools are now mediating tools between the user and the works for any work that can be considered derivative, meaning that, and I'll go into this a little bit later when we're talking about when we're talking about the nature of OER and AI. Copyrighted works are taken into the data set of the tool, and they are converted to values, to numbers, and then the raw data is discarded. And so you don't get any of the text, you don't get any of the themes or anything from the book or from the conversations from the sites. You're just getting vectors, and it's a bunch of math calculus. You're not taking text and duplicating it in a response. There's like thousands of steps in between taking the raw data and getting an output from an AI tool. So did the AI tool infringe, or did the user infringe? If you're still thinking I'm thinking this is a direct derivation, was it the AI that infringed and copyright and copied, or was it the user because they prompted and because they directed that? There's a difference between training AI on copyrighted materials, like I said, and using AI in a prompt. If you're taking a PDF of something and you're putting it into a prompt and you're saying, hey, analyze this PDF and make something, that is not training. That is not training an AI tool. You are deriving something. So that is completely different. So you can't use the same argument. It's the difference between data calculus informed probabilization, taking the original and converting it into numbers, and here's a PDF, write me a paragraph about this, write me the same thing but with different characters, that type of thing. There is a difference. So large language models work by, again, like I said, taking raw data or information, say from Project Gutenberg or from Wikipedia, and then converting that into numbers and analyzing those numbers and the relationships, and then taking this data and programming a massive set of essentially computers or network nodes to take data or take the numbers that are converted and multiply or add them or do a bunch of different things, and then use those numbers to influence another computer and another computer and so on. And then finally, you get front-end use. Then a final row converts the numbers and converts all that data into text or into whatever output you want. So data, conversion and analysis, and then you get ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity that are communicating to you through writing or as a human would. And then you have your front-end use. Now you can use this text generator as a chatbot, as a data retrieval agent, or this is retrieval augmented generation, to search the web, to perform data analysis. But all this data conversion and calculus comes first. So copyright, when we have copyright, we own the title to the intellectual property of a particular work. And that means that the creator of a work or whoever owns the rights has control over a book, but more importantly, has control over the content, the context, the themes, the ideas in that book. Intellectual property is the creation that was the result of the work of the mind or one or more people. It's not only the text, it's all the text together, what that says, what that means. And a work, and I'm sorry, I'm going really into Ferber, I'm going really into all the, all the nitty-gritty details, is an expression of ideas through any type of media. So it's the expression of the idea that can be controlled. So you can't take an expression of someone's idea, you can't take someone's opera You can't take, I guess, Hamilton and make, you know, a similar thing about someone else without getting, you know, Lin-Manuel Miranda's and et cetera's permission, because it would be a derivation of his ideas and his expression of those ideas. So you can control duplications, alterations, performances, displays, and disseminations of works, including derivations, unless it's a genuine parody. So you can copyright musical works, dramatic works, audiovisual works, sound recordings, all these types of expressions. If it's communicating something, even through sculpture, you know, even through a building, it can be copyrighted. The thing is, it cannot be copyrighted. Recipes. So you can ask for as many recipes as you want. You can put as many recipes as you want to in there. It doesn't violate copyright. You can copyright, you know, expressions or, you know, formatting of recipes, but not the content. I wouldn't trust any recipes created by ChatGPT. Just saying that out loud right now. But you can't copyright facts or data. You can't copyright the works of federal government employees, no matter how much people might want to think that. You can't copyright devices. That would be more patent things or public domain materials. So there are 8 main ideas we need to consider when discussing copyright and generative AI. So now we know what copyright is. We know how generative AI works. How should we act now that we know what these things are? And if you want to talk to me, and I'm not rambling on and on, you can email me or talk to me on LinkedIn about these things. It really makes me excited. I love it. First of all, our understanding and actions regarding AI and copyright operate within the parameters of existing copyright law. If a court has not ruled it, or if the Copyright Office has not said it, it is not going to be binding. And now the Copyright Office has said some things. Like I said, things happen all the time and change all the time. Current copyright law mandates human authorship for protection. Now, according to, and I'll give you a snippet of the new ruling or the new communique by the Copyright Office, human authors on a case-by-case basis can be granted copyright of the selection, arrangement, presentation, and manipulation of AI outputs, but not for the text of those outputs themselves. So we can't consider an AI an author under existing copyright law. But that doesn't mean that we can't use AI outputs in what we're creating. We must also explore whether this AI systems programmer can claim copyright over these works. It's our responsibility to stay informed over what people are claiming and what courts are saying, and kind of, you know, the issues surrounding that, so we can come to informed decisions and make good decisions so we're not liable. Always prioritize respecting intellectual property rights when using AI-generated content. You shouldn't be prompting AI tools to make something in, you know, in the style of Salvador Dali, or, you know, in the style of Leonard Bernstein. No matter how much I want to make an AI-generated parody of Bernstein or Sondheim songs, I can't do it. Maybe a parody, but I can't. I'm not going to touch that. You should never put copyrighted content in prompts. This could change relatively soon. The ARL and ALA argue that training generative AI models on copyrighted works is fair use. That quote is actually the title of their article on the subject. If you wanted to take that copy and paste it, an amazing argument on why it's fair use. And I personally believe it is, but we need to be cognizant of all the issues. OpenAI permits the use of AI outputs as long as we don't misrepresent them as entirely human work. And using AI-generated content should never be a workaround to avoid due diligence. Here are several AI-generated works. We have Zari of the Dawn over here, Teatro de Ópera Espacial over here, and a photograph that was submitted for the Sony or the Sony photograph competition. All of these were copyrighted or attempted to be copyrighted, and they couldn't be copyrighted. And so the idea or the question we need to ask is, here we have these expressive works. What arguments would you make for or against these products? What argument would you make for copywriting or against copywriting these? For open educational resources, we don't have to worry about that as much. When many people think of OER, they think of, you know, Wikipedia. You know, somebody copied Wikipedia, formatted it, and then said, hey, this is an academic source. That's not entirely true. OERs are open to remix and adapt, and they're free for everyone to share and to disseminate and to repackage. These 5 licenses are open, And so you can kind of use these and reuse them and re-disseminate them. So they are excellent for making chatbots or for making materials. These two and actually technically copyrighted materials that are shared on pages where you can access them openly are open. But I wouldn't use these materials, but any of these 5 materials you can use, and you won't be violating copyright. Some of these licenses and some of these users, you can have statements that say, you know, I don't want this to be used to train an AI model. And Cable Green has asked, you know, and the other Creative Commons people have asked that you respect that. But that is, these 5 licenses over here are good to use in that. I would like to thank Nathan Hunter for his book, The Art of Prompt Engineering, that kind of is a really good resource on using AI and generative AI. And so here I would also encourage you to follow Ethan Malik. He has a lot of good ideas about AI, artificial intelligence, and I am a minute over. I apologize. So I will turn it over to the next presenter. Thank you very much.
I believe I'm next. Hi, I'm Jennifer Goodland, and I am a reference and instruction librarian at San Juan College in Farmington, New Mexico. At San Juan College, we have been creating AI-assisted course packs that use library materials to replace or to enhance textbooks. So I used Canva's AI to create this presentation. So we are a community college located in Farmington, New Mexico. We are a Native American serving non-tribal institution, and we are a Hispanic serving institution. And now we are surrounded by local reservations, including the Southern Ute, Mountain Ute, Jicarilla Apache, Navajo Nation, and Hopi Nation. We additionally have students, faculty, and staff from dozens of different tribes and nations. And one problem that we have consistently had deals with that equity issue that other presenters have mentioned, which is that learning materials, particularly at the college level, don't tend to represent Native scholarship very well, Native cultures. One example of that is that the high schools in New Mexico just got fancy new textbooks for social studies, and the textbooks have an owl on the cover. Now, owls are taboo in traditional Dene Navajo culture, so they could not use those textbooks. So little things like that happen all the time. There are taboos that are included in materials. At the worst of it and then at the best of it, our Indigenous members don't tend to see themselves reflected in their learning materials. Let's see. So we had specific needs. We needed to relieve cognitive load because textbooks, particularly in the health sciences, for example, are incredibly dense. They're intimidating to a lot of students, even the ones that are very good. So we needed to create open educational resources that dealt with that cognitive load and help make existing textbooks more approachable. We needed to reflect the cultures that are at play in the Farmington area. We needed to address specific program needs. We have a lot of unique programs. For example, our education program, which you'll see shortly, has to understand the New Mexico school system and the New Mexico School Board standards, and also the Navajo Nation School Board standards, because they have a different school system. Decreasing textbook cost. New Mexico is, and the reservations in particular, are some of the poorest areas in the entire country. So textbook cost, a single semester's worth of textbooks may be equivalent to 2 months' rent. So we can do stuff like, offer free tuition and offer scholarships, but textbooks seem to be tougher, so we needed a replacement. And then we also wanted to facilitate program expansion using materials that were custom tailored for our institution. So this is an example of one particular AI-assisted Yeah, one AI-assisted library course pack. So I used our learning outcomes. I'll do a live demo in a second. I used our learning outcomes specific to that class. I included attachments so that ChatGPT would not retain the information or train on the information. It would merely summarize. That's an important distinction with ChatGPT. Of these articles that are available in the library, or are available on the web that were specific to what that instructor wanted to teach. So we have a reading list using library resources. I asked ChatGPT to suggest different plot points for a narrative. We're linking narrative learning theory, which is a really big thing in Indigenous education, with our nonfiction education. So there's a short story that talks about some of the issues in this reading list. At the end, if the professor wants, there are reflection questions to help with critical thinking skills. If the professor wishes, we can suggest assignments. We can even have ChatGPT write quizzes, although it's not great at saying which page numbers all the answers are on. So I always have to double check that, and it's usually wrong. So I always have to rewrite that. And it's exported all via our Canvas LMS, so it's easy to distribute. These are asynchronous classes. This is called the Teach Up Academy that our education department has launched. And so these are asynchronous and self-paced because many of the students live on the Navajo reservation and don't have electricity or home internet. And so they have to go to the chapter house when they get a chance to be able to complete their lessons. So ChatGPT really helped, really helped our students not just take asynchronous classes that we constructed, but also we're teaching the teachers in the Navajo Nation how to use generative AI for themselves to create their own curriculum. And we're seeing really great results with that it's something that is really having an impact with digital equity. So materials are via PDF for accessibility. Obviously, if they have home internet, or if they don't have home internet, they're not going to be able to read that, to read those materials. Unless they have it printed out. And also we found that that's an accessibility issue too. As much as we can do PDFs, we prefer to drive circulation statistics, which this has had a great impact on our circulation statistics. But if we can't, then it's an easy thing to provide a PDF. These are all students who are registered at the college, so we don't need to worry about, the database says we're not supposed to do that. We do worry about licensing. We like to keep, you like to stick pretty close to licensing and copyright and make sure that we're not violating anybody's intent. So we have over 200 of these modules that we have pushed out in the last year and a half. This is a class, this is competency-based education with neonatal respiratory therapy. Their issue was cognitive load, that their existing textbook was way too intimidating. And then the textbook was also not geared towards the competency exams that respiratory therapists have to pass in order to be practicing in a hospital. So we uploaded the index and we uploaded the table of contents via attachments into ChatGPT, along with the competencies and the concepts within the competencies. And we just asked the ChatGPT to match them up. So now the textbook is accessible. It says if you're struggling with neonatal vital signs, you should go to part 2, chapter 5, for example. And it did that for the entire book. And we've gotten fantastic student feedback. All right, so I wanted to demonstrate this. Let's see, keeping an eye on the Q&As too. Okay, so we have a Q&A, and I can actually address this as part of the demonstration. So we have ChatGPT. I wanted to show you how we upload an attachment instead of uploading something that's within the prompt. If it's within the prompt, like for example, if I type in, here's a paragraph from War and Peace, blah, blah, something, death, Russians. So if I type that in, anything that's within the chat prompt, it's confused. I love confusing him. So anything that is within the prompt is going to be used as training material. And that's not within the intent of copyright laws and intellectual property preferences. However, if you attach a PDF of an article or a PDF of a source or a URL, it's not going, the way that ChatGPT works is that it is going to retain those in temporary memory, but it will not use that for training. So if I just asked it to do something else with this Alaska school attendance and chronic absenteeism article, it doesn't have that PDF in its memory anymore. I would have to re-upload that PDF in an attachment. So you can press on this plus button, attach files, and you can do this if you're logged into ChatGPT. Upload from computer, connect to Google Drive, connect to OneDrive, and then I can just ask it to summarize, or in this case, I've asked it to write a lecture of 1,500 words, and these lectures are very basic, but it summarizes key points in the article and includes some quotes, but nothing that's going to violate that intellectual property. And while these lectures are basic, I like to make sure that they're basic so that the professor can feel free to rewrite and to add their own spin on things. This is a structure of an outline. I don't want to ever make a professor feel as though they have to deliver the information the way that it's laid out in ChatGPT. Now, these summaries are good also for our English language learners. We have many people who are attending here whose first language is Dene. And so if they're learning English, or maybe they're just more used to Dene Bazad, then this can help summarize that article and make academic writing a lot more approachable. So that's another that's another equity piece. All right, getting back to our ChatGPT. So I asked it to extract the summary, and let's see. Yes, and you can turn off training from your prompts on the settings of ChatGPT. Thank you so much. That's great information. And then I asked it to clarify something. Hey, where did you find Martinez Yazzie in pages 2 to 5? It's on me as a librarian to know what's in that material, and so it doesn't. So using this doesn't replace that subject knowledge. You do need to know something about subject knowledge. And so it can get stuff wrong. So, hey, the Martinez Yazzie lawsuit is mentioned within the context provided, which was really, really important to know. And then it gives me some more information. It's like, okay, well, you've included information outside the pages I asked for. Please limit your lecture to only pages 2 through 5. Sometimes you do have to be firm with it, and you do have to work with the prompts. So it's not as easy as just uploading something and then letting ChatGPT do whatever it wants. There is facilitation that goes along with this. And then on that note with facilitation, I have very carefully curated, and I'm always curating and recurating personalization. So in your ChatGPT account, you can shorten a lot of your work and get ChatGPT used to the tones that you prefer, what's important to you, and you can go into manage, and it says, okay, my teaching approach, these are things that have learned about me. Teaching approach reflects a learner-centered philosophy, integrating theories such as constructivism, self-determination theory, blah, 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 blah. And it's got some other stuff. One thing about ChatGPT too is that it's really hyper about what it likes to remember. So you do have to go and curate these periodically to make sure that it's not sort of cluttered. You can give it custom instructions as well. You can even create custom, on the Pro version, you can create custom GPT instances. Let's see, some other things that we do quizzes, but it's good at writing quiz questions. But I find that I often have to double check its work. For example, it says that the primary purpose of the principal preparation program discussed in the document, answer is B, and it's on page 2. Well, I go back to page 2 and it's actually not there. So I have to make sure, I have to double check all this work. It's a lot like having an employee who is more enthusiastic than knowledgeable. So yes, you as a manager do have to manage your AI like you manage any employee. You have to double check the work because you're responsible for what's put out. Now I put this into my Canvas shell. I had instructional design create a Canvas shell, and then I create the educational module in Canvas. I upload what I have. I write the narrative, do the reflection questions, and then I can send it to a professor. They can import it into their Canvas, and then they're good to go. All right, so checking back to the questions. Let's see. And yeah, I find that ChatGPT does summarize pretty well. You know, it doesn't so much shorten in my experience, but then, you know, I've warned it against doing that in my personalization. The more you personalize that ChatGPT instance, the better it's going to work for you, and the more it's not going to do the things that you don't want it to do. All right, so and we have created so many of these that we actually needed to start a side company because we had too much work. So yeah, just as a side note, now we have a company that handles whatever faculty and staff can't do after hours. Outside of our normal working hours. And that was an important thing to do with our faculty and staff because we don't, because we can't afford to pay faculty and staff what we're really worth at San Juan College. Our trustees, our administration is very good about acknowledging that. But at the same time, they also don't stand in our way if we have a side business to handle some big initiative. So I don't know if that's a reflection of New Mexico being kind of a lawless place still, but we are happy to have a lot of administrative support. They're very AI friendly here, and we've seen what it can do with not with Indigenous communities, with the Dene in particular, and how our work, particularly in educational contexts, gets shortened by the use of AI. And I should note too, on personalization, I have a lot of stuff loaded into personalization that talks about digital equity, AI equity, respect for intellectual property, respect for copyright law. You know, these are things that are important to me. So ChatGPT needs to know that it's important to me. All right, do we want to do Q&A?
Oops. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, Lily, Sarah, and Reed. That was fabulous. So many things to think about.